Karl-Anthony Towns gets to the Knicks. That's the biggest story. This is a position of need for the Knicks, especially with iHeart leaving, Mitch Robinson hurt. Mitch Robinson in trade rumors all summer and still is.
Yeah.
Get to that. Mark, how you feeling? You got potentially your second best player.
Yeah. And we gave up our second best player too. But I do feel a little better moments ago. Anthony kind of saying that he feels like this is a scary team. I mean, Anthony doesn't have the emotion that I have seeing one of my players go. So like there's no bias and like I guess you want to make trades that make your in conference rivals a little bit nervous. Overall, I mean, my first thoughts, like, this has been a guy they've wanted for a while. This is a guy who, like, him, Booker, and Donnie were like the guys who just were the perpetual, like, rinse and repeat Twitter trade rumors. He's got New York ties, New Jersey, close enough. And like it's a big star. They had been saying for a while, like, under the Leon management, the trade for the big star was no longer like the butt of the joke for the Knicks. Oh, one day they'll trade for a star. Like, no, we are going to use our assets to make it happen. I thought it was Mikael. I thought we already did it. But I mean, it's a lot of shooting on that team. A lot of shooting.
It's a lot of shooting, and Julius Randle has always reminded me of a Kyrie Irving on the Celtics type of player where
Yeah.
he was individually a very good player, but you saw it. Kyrie got injured for the Celtics in their postseason run. They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. The Knicks, yeah, they got worn down, but they easily would have made the Eastern Conference Finals if they had been fully healthy without Randle there. So
Yeah.
I think this is a big plus. I'm also curious what you think about with Cat going back to his old coach who really taught him how to be a better player.
Yeah, I mean, I my history's right. I don't think they left on the best of terms
Yeah,
in
I kind of think
Minnesota.
I kind of think it's kind of iffy on that. That's one of the parts that worries
Yeah.
me is that like Towns was the person who didn't take the fall. It was Jimmy and Tibbs. They get fired slash leave the team within a year of each other, and
Right.
Towns and Wiggins are the ones who survive. And there's no chance, there's no end. Like there's definitely a
Right.
conversation that needs to happen there between those two, you know?
Yeah, they got some shit to smooth over. But I mean, the comments have all been good that they've actually had a relationship over the years and that both of them have grown to appreciate each other since
Yeah.
leaving.
Mhm.
I can't imagine that they would, in the media say, no, I actually really hate this guy. I hated working with him. Like that's the kind of stuff your agent tells you to say. But maybe it's true. I like Cat was a young guy at the time, and Jimmy has not, since leaving Minnesota, he's proved his basketball acumen, but he's also proved that he's not the easiest guy to work with. So, maybe that was just a whole clusterfuck and in a much more functional environment they'll get along better. But I definitely think that it's also Towns is not a Tibbs kind of guy. Like this is becoming a Tibbs kind of team in some ways, but like Towns is not a super physical bust your ass kind of guy to me. He's more of I guess, doesn't play defense as hard and is more of an offensive player.
It's not the classic Tibbs mold where he likes
No,
like a guy who's a hustle player, has intangibles, and then maybe we transform him into something better. That's
couldn't be
kind of
more
like,
different than Josh Hart, for example.
yeah, or even Jimmy. I mean, Jimmy Butler,
Yeah,
Tibbs in Chicago, and then Minnesota.
yeah,
Some of the best development we've seen out of Jimmy came under Tibbs because he's that type of player. He's 29th overall pick, comes in, has to grind, and Tibbs is going to give you those shots. But yeah, I mean, I do want actually, I'll stick to the Towns piece. Just looking at his resume in Minnesota, if you compare it to Randall's recent resume, Randall over the last 4 years has been All-Star 3 times. Towns has been All-Star twice. Towns has only been All-NBA once in that span. Randall's
yeah,
been All-NBA twice. Both
yeah.
All-Stars last year. So if you look at it that way, you could get tricked by this trade, but I think we have to remember Randall in the playoffs. So he's been an All-Star 3 times. First time he was an All-Star. Those are the 3 times he's been in the playoffs. Obviously, the third time he was injured.
Yeah.
The first time he was in the playoffs, played 5 games. He scored 18 points per game. Shot 29% from the field,
He
33%.
was horrid.
Yeah, that's the first time, and that's only 5 games, so be it. But last year, not this past year, but the year previous in 22-23, plays 10 games, 16 points per game, 35% from the field, 25% from three, and
Yeah.
that is the issue. Like I think Towns, if Tibbs player or not, this is a guy who in his playoff career is 19 points per game on 47% from the field, 36% from three. He's a 7-footer. He's a 7-footer who contributed to a team that was able to strap Jokic. Was he a main cause of that? Not really, in my opinion, but contributed to
He was
that.
there.
And so I think objectively, this is a really steep upgrade. Like on the Randle spot itself, I think this is a pretty steep upgrade. We could talk about Dante in the first and whatever. But
we'll talk about Dante. So yes, I agree with all that. The one piece that I think gets overlooked is Randle in the Cavs series 2 playoffs ago was atrocious from the floor, as you brought up, but he was bullying Evan Mobley and Jared Allen around the court. So there are some intangibles he does. I took the liberty of making a kind of Cat versus Randle pros versus cons. Cat is obviously a much better shooter, a much better spacer. He's wildly more efficient. I looked it up, and the average EFG shooting percentage for last season was 0.547. Cat's like a career 0.576, sometimes hitting 6, and Randle's like a career 500, sometimes lower into the 400s. So that is a net. He's not an efficient shooter. They're very similar on turnovers, but here's where Randle's better. Randle's a much better passer. He's a much better rebounder. He's much more physical, and might as well, a few minutes in, start with the hot take. I think Randle's a much higher ceiling, which sounds crazy to say because Towns is like such a blue chip prospect. But I think when Randle has it all together, I think it's ridiculous. But there's the floor, which Randle's floor is so much lower than Cat. Which, Max, you brought it up. Like, both guys have a reputation for taking a step back in the playoffs. Cat goes from all-star to still a very good player, just a little bit quiet at times. Randle can be detrimental on the court. He can be poison, which Cat almost never is. Worst case, he's just a little quiet.